almost as long as I'd known about Primoria. For me, fish owls were like a beautiful thought I couldn't quite articulate. They evoked the same wondrous longing as some distant place I'd always wanted to visit, but didn't really know much about. I pondered fish owls and felt cool from the canopy shadows they hid in, and smelled moss clinging to riverside stones. Immediately after scaring off the owl, I scanned through my dog-eared field guide, but no species seemed to fit. The fish owl painted there reminded me more of a dour trash can than the defiant, floppy goblin we'd just seen, and neither matched the fish owl in my mind. I didn't have to guess too long about what species I'd spotted, though. I'd taken photos. My grainy shots eventually made their way to an ornithologist in Vladivostok named Sergei Surmich, the only person working with fish owls in the region. It turned out that no scientist had seen a Blakiston's fish owl so far south in 100 years, and my photographs were evidence that this rare, reclusive species still persisted. Introduction. After completing a Master of Science project at the University of Minnesota in 2005, studying the impacts of logging on Primoria's songbirds, I began brainstorming for a PhD topic in the region as well. I was interested in something with broad conservation impact and quickly narrowed my species contenders to the hooded crane and the fish owl. These were the two least studied and most charismatic birds in the province. I was drawn more to fish owls, but given the lack of information about them, was worried that these birds might almost be too scarce to study. Around the time of my deliberations, I happened to spend a few days hiking through a larch bog, an open, damp landscape with an even spacing of spindly trees above a thick carpet of fragrant Labrador tea. At first I found this setting lovely, but after a while, with nowhere to hide from the sun, a headache from the oppressive aroma of Labrador tea, and biting insects descending in clouds, I'd had enough. Then it hit me. This was hooded crane habitat. The fish owl might be rare, devoting time and energy to it might be a gamble, but at least I would not have to spend the next 5 years slogging through larch bogs. I went with fish owls. Given its reputation as a hardy creature in an inhospitable environment, the fish owl is a symbol of Primoria's wilderness almost as much as the Amur, also called Siberian, tiger. While these two species share the same forests and are both endangered, far less is known about the lives of the feathered salmon eaters. A fish owl nest was not discovered in Russia until 1971, and by the 1980s there were thought to be no more than 300 to 400 pairs of fish owls in the entire country. There were serious concerns for their future. Other than the fact that fish owls seemed to need big trees to nest in and fish-rich rivers to feed from, not much was known about them. Across the sea in Japan, just a few hundred kilometers east, fish owls had been reduced to fewer than 100 birds by the early 1980s, down from approximately 500 pairs at the end of the 19th century. This beleaguered population lost nesting habitat to logging and food to construction of downstream dams that blocked salmon migration up rivers. Fish owls of Primoria had been shielded from a similar fate by Soviet inertia, poor infrastructure, and a low human population density. But the free market that emerged in the 1990s bred wealth, corruption, and a covetous eye focused keenly on the untouched natural resources in northern Primoria, thought to be the fish owl's global stronghold. Fish owls in Russia were vulnerable. For a naturally low density and slow reproducing species, any large-scale or sustained disruption to their required natural resources could mean a precipitous population freefall such as the one seen in Japan and the loss of one of Russia's most mysterious and iconic bird species. Fish owls and other endangered species were protected by Russian law. It was illegal to kill them or destroy their habitat, but without concrete knowledge of what their needs were, it was impossible to develop a workable conservation plan. No such approach for fish owls existed, and by the late 1990s, previously inaccessible forests in Primoria were increasingly becoming sites of resource extraction. The need for a serious fish owl conservation strategy was escalating. Conservation is different from preservation. Had I wanted to preserve fish owls, I wouldn't have needed research. I could have lobbied the government for a ban of all logging and fishing in Primoria. These broad measures would protect fish owls by eliminating all threats to them. But aside from being unrealistic, such a move would ignore the 2 million people living in the province, a proportion of whom rely on the logging and fishing industries for their livelihood.